The first strike didn't make a sound. Space swallowed the explosion before the alarms caught up, projecting only a brief shimmer across the Nova Alio's dawn. At first, most people thought it was atmospheric refraction or a freighter jumping in too close. Then the sky tore open. A blinding arc of white fire carved through the upper atmosphere, slicing across the colony like an executioner's blade. Buildings cracked from the pressure wave before the blast even reached the ground. The peaceful hum of the capital vanished, replaced by the roar of collapsing steel and a rising chorus of terrified voices. Commander Orrin Hale stood on the balcony of the Peace Embassy when the second strike hit. The shockwave hurled him backwards, slamming him into the reinforced glass. He staggered up, ears ringing, vision smeared with dust and flames. A plume of incandescent debris spiraled into the sky where the Commerce District had been moments earlier. "Evacuate the eastern quarters," Orrin shouted as the embassy officers scrambled around him. Debris rattled against the walls like hail. Go now." A third beam burned through the horizon, vaporizing the transport hub, obliterating escape routes in a single calculated shot. No warning transmission, no diplomatic breach, no ultimatum. Just annihilation, precise, cold, absolute. Orrin sprinted through the trembling corridor. The overhead lights flickered, switching to emergency crimson. Every screen along the wall showed the same message streaming through the network. "Incoming hive fire, seek immediate shelter." Hive fire. Threxian weapon signatures. Their allies. A security officer slid into view, panting. "Commander, the high hives, those are their dreadnought beams. They're hitting every metro district." Orrin refused to believe it. Check again. It could be hijacked systems. A pirate relay. Anything. "It's not spoofed, sir. Their transponders are authentic." The corridor shook, nearly knocking them over. A black plume rose through the shattered embassy ceiling, bringing with it the stench of burning fuel and scorched stone. Orrin felt a cold stillness settle over him. "Then this is deliberate." The officer didn't answer. They raced down to the protected levels. Security shutters groaned as they sealed behind them. Civilians packed the stairwells, crying, shouting, holding children close. Some wore embassy badges, some wore construction uniforms. No one looked prepared for the apocalypse. A trembling technician grabbed Orrin's arm. "The blast maps show 8 impacts, 4 confirmed total wipes, 4 ongoing." "Commander, it's the whole planet." A sick weight gathered in Orrin's chest. Nova Alios wasn't a military world. It was a shared colony, humans and Threxians living together, trading knowledge, shaping a future built on trust. Strike patterns like these weren't random. They were extermination routes. He forced his voice steady. "Guide these people to Shelter Bay 3. Keep them moving." He reached the hangar as a wave of dust swept through the tunnel, coating the floor in pale ash. The sliding doors barely responded. The explosion above must have warped the tracks. Orrin forced them open with 2 engineers, and the sight beyond froze all 3. The capital sprawl had become a single blazing wound. Towers bent like broken limbs, molten metal dripping from the edges. Streets glowed with streaks of fire where plasma beams had carved through neighborhoods. The soft blue skies of Nova Alios were gone, drowned beneath a ceiling of churning black smoke. But what truly hollowed Orrin's breath was the shape emerging from the clouds. A Threxian dreadnought, sleek, metallic, pulsing with hive lights, descended with eerie grace. Its ventral cannons glowed with residual charge, reflecting off the flames below. The dreadnought rotated slowly, aligning its next shot. A mechanic beside him whispered, almost inaudible, "Why would they do this?" Orrin had no answer. The dreadnought fired. A column of light slammed into the Capitol Tower, an iconic structure built jointly by both species. Glass walls vaporized instantly. The tower folded in on itself, collapsing into a spiraling inferno. The ground shuddered under their feet. Heat brushed Orrin's face even from miles away. He forced himself to move. Shock wouldn't save anyone. "We need shuttles in the air," he ordered. "Whatever's left." A few pilots scrambled to respond, dodging falling embers. Orrin loaded survivors into the 2 functional transports. The third burned on the runway, its hull melted into slag. They launched just as the dreadnought repositioned. Once in the sky, the horror widened. Entire districts vanished into clouds of dust and liquid stone. Escape lanes swarmed with panicked civilian craft, all obliterated by a sweeping beam that carved through the traffic like a scythe. Orin gripped the harness, jaw clenched. "Commander," the co-pilot said, voice cracking. "Multiple distress calls. More than I can count. Put them through." The cockpit filled with overlapping screams from different colonies. "New Arcadia is gone, everyone. Threxian fleets in orbit, we never fired on them. My God, they're killing every. No survivors, burning everything." The channels dissolved into static. Orin couldn't even process all the voices before a new signal broke through. Weak, distorted, almost consumed by interference. He recognized the voice instantly. Ambassador Vrak, a Threxian diplomat assigned to Nova Alios. A close ally. A friend. "Commander Hale, listen, the Sovereign lies." The channel cut to silence. Orin felt his pulse stop. "Ambassador Vrak, respond." "Nothing." The pilot turned to him. "Sir, what does that mean?" Orin stared at the dead console. "I don't know. But he wanted us to hear it." The shuttle broke through the smoke layer. Only then did Orin see the full scale of devastation. Millions of lives extinguished in minutes. Traces of peace treaties, unity symbols, and shared infrastructures now buried under burning rubble. A world built together, undone without explanation. Orin closed his eyes for one slow breath, steadying himself. The dreadnought above pivoted toward another district, its weapons pulsing with lethal intent. There was no mercy in its movements. No hesitation. No confusion. Only purpose. "Set course for the orbital debris field," Orin ordered quietly. "We find survivors. As many as we can." The co-pilot nodded, tears streaking through soot on her face. As the shuttle ascended, Orin looked down at the dying planet. The treaty he had dedicated his life to upholding had turned to ash in a single morning. Peace, trust, diplomacy, all meaningless beneath the glare of genocide. Whatever truth Vrak tried to share died with him, but Orin felt its weight settle like a cold anchor in his chest. He whispered to himself, this wasn't just an attack. Something deeper is buried here. The shuttle ascended into orbit, carrying the last remnants of Nova Alios. Behind them, the world continued to burn. Above them, more hive ships descended. And ahead of them, Orin could sense only one path. Find out why the Threxians turned. And make sure humanity survived long enough to learn it. The debris field above Nova Alios stretched across half the orbital ring, a drifting cemetery of shattered hulls and scorched metal. Orin's shuttle slid through the broken remains, maneuvering between fragments of once familiar ships now floating lifelessly in the void. Fires flickered inside ruptured compartments before the vacuum smothered them, leaving only cooling embers drifting like dying stars. "Scan for escape pods," Orin said, leaning forward as the sensors swept the region in widening arcs. The pilot adjusted the course. "I'm picking up faint transponder pings, multiple sources, low power." Orin exhaled with relief. There were survivors out here. They spent the next hours towing pods into the shuttle's small bay. Children huddled beneath emergency blankets, trembling. Engineers with burns and fractured limbs clung to stretchers. A medic from the northern district stared blankly at the wall, whispering through cracked lips, it all happened so fast. By dawn cycle, their shuttle was packed beyond safe capacity, but Orin refused to abandon anyone. The final pod they latched contained a group of Marines barely conscious from oxygen deprivation. One of them grabbed Orin's forearm as the seal opened. "Commander, they're wiping every colony. I heard the broadcasts: Arcadia, Meridian, Solstice. All hit." Orin swallowed hard. "We'll get you stabilized. Rest." They had saved roughly 4,000 people out of 3 million. The shuttle docked with a damaged freighter drifting nearby. Its engines were dead, but its hull remained intact. Orin converted it into a temporary refuge, ordering crew members to reinforce airlocks and reroute limited power to life support. Inside the dim cargo hold, Survivors gathered around portable heaters, murmuring in fear. Orin stood before them, hands clasped behind his back. "We're not staying here," he said. "The Threxian fleets will sweep this area soon. We'll move once we have a flight plan." A technician raised her hand. "Where do we go? Every major system is reporting attacks." Orin gestured toward the holomap on the wall. "There are still mining stations in the outer belts, uninhabited moons, industrial platforms, places not worth bombing. We'll regroup, gather supplies, and assess." The technician nodded, though fear didn't leave her eyes. Orin left the crowd and entered the freighter's improvised command room. Displays flickered with static, patched together from scavenged consoles and a half-functional navigation core. A handful of officers hunched over the screens, monitoring fragmented transmissions. Lieutenant Kale turned as Orin entered. "Sir, you need to see this." He played a transmission intercepted from the edge of the system. A blurry image of a Threxian scout ship appeared, its hull patterns unmistakable. A distorted voice followed. "Unit, requesting extraction. Damage, severe. Redirecting." Static swallowed the rest. Orin tensed. A scout ship this close to the debris field? They're looking for survivors. Kale hesitated. Or finishing them. Orin's jaw tightened. "Where is it now?" Kale pointed to a blip moving toward an asteroid cluster. "It looks crippled. We might intercept." Orin didn't hesitate. "Prep a team. We take it alive." The shuttle glided silently into the shadow of a large asteroid. The damaged scout ship drifted nearby, its hull scored with burn marks, one engine completely dead. No weapon signatures active. Orin signaled his team. Quiet approach. No sudden moves. Magnets latched as they docked. Orin led the entry team inside. The interior smelled of melted circuitry and acidic coolant. They passed through a ruptured corridor until they reached the central cabin. A lone Threxian warrior lay slumped against the controls, carapace cracked, bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically. Its breathing was uneven, mandibles twitching in pain. Orin stepped forward cautiously. "We're not here to kill you. You're hurt. Let us help." The Threxian lifted its head weakly, voice rattling through damaged vocalizers. "Human, Commander, why?" Orin crouched. "Why did your fleet attack us? What changed?" The creature's eyes pulsed with fractured light. "Sovereign decree. Humans, deviation threat, extinction probability rising. Preemptive cull required." Kale hissed under his breath, "Monsters." Orin raised a hand to silence him. "What deviation? We honored every treaty." The Threxian clutched its chest, struggling. Hive calculus predicted conflict. Humans, unpredictable. Dangerous. Orin forced himself to stay calm. "That doesn't justify genocide." Its mandibles clicked sharply, as though glitching. "Peace unstable, fragmentation inevitable. We acted first." Orin leaned in. "Then why do you look terrified?" The Threxian's biolights flickered erratically, dimming. "Not fear, malfunction. We were altered. Sovereign's will overrides conflict instincts. But something wrong. Signals corrupted. Thoughts, not fully mine." Orin felt a chill rise along his spine. "Corrupted how?" The Threxian trembled, its voice dropping to a whisper. "Sovereign lies. Something else guiding him. Something unseen." It collapsed, mandibles falling still. Kale exhaled shakily. "They're being controlled. Or infected. Or something worse." Orin examined the warrior's armor. Etched along the underside were faint patterns, non-Threxian symbols, eroded but deliberate. Someone or something had altered their neural pathways. He stood slowly. "Bring the body. Every piece of data we can extract may save us." Back aboard the freighter, the mood had shifted. Fear now blended with anger and resolve. Survivors gathered around makeshift command tables while engineers patched old hulls, turning the derelict freighter into a functional vessel. Orin joined the engineering platform, observing as technicians cut into the scout ship's data core. Sparks lit the chamber as layers of alien tech were peeled away. Finally, A small crystalline node was extracted, a hive memory fragment. Kale glanced at Orin. If we decrypt this, we might understand Sovereign's reasoning. Orin nodded. Do it. Hours passed as the node pulsed on the console. Slowly, patterns emerged, forming partial logs, fragments of internal hive directives, incomplete but revealing. One line burned brighter than the others. Orin leaned in as the translation rendered. Projection: human autonomy leads to conflict with hive survival arc solution. Terminate species before divergence reaches critical threshold. Kale slammed his fist on the table. They think we'll destroy them someday. So they struck first. Orin didn't speak immediately. His thoughts drifted back to Ambassador Vrak's final words, the sovereign lies. Something was missing. He addressed the room. We can't rely on assumptions. The logs are fragmented. We need a clearer source. The medic from earlier stepped forward. What are you suggesting? Orin pointed to the star map. The nearest hive relay station. If the sovereign altered the hive network, the evidence will be there. Kale looked uneasy. That's deep in their territory. Which is why they won't expect humans to go near it, Orin said. We move before the dreadnoughts return. The survivors exchanged tense glances, but determination rippled across the room. They had lost everything, but they were not defeated. Orin straightened. We're no longer refugees. We're the Alios remnant. We find the truth. We survive. And we fight back if we must. Engines ignited across the patched ships. The convoy drifted from the debris field, forming a loose formation behind the freighter. As the stars stretched into thin white lines and the fleet slipped into warp, Orin finally allowed himself one quiet thought. If the sovereign believed humanity would one day threaten them, then something far worse must be looming over the hive. He didn't know what awaited them at the relay station, but he knew one thing. The truth would decide the fate of both species. The relay station drifted ahead like a floating wound in space, an enormous skeletal structure built around a hollow sphere thrumming with faint hive light. Its outer hull glowed with dull amber patterns, flickering in uneven rhythms as though the station itself were struggling to remain conscious. Orin stood on the bridge of the freighter, watching the structure rotate slowly against the dark backdrop. Bring us in under minimal emissions, he said. If any hive watchers remain, we slip past them. Kale adjusted controls, lowering power output until the engines whispered. No active patrols. No beacon signals. It's abandoned, or worse. The station's airlocks hung open, their circular doors frozen mid-cycle. Debris drifted around them, broken drones, shredded cables, shattered crystalline nodes that once carried hive communications. Something had torn through this place long before the Alios remnant arrived. Orin tightened his harness. Team Alpha, suit up. We're boarding. They entered through a ruptured cargo conduit, pushing aside fragments of metal floating weightlessly. The interior smelled faintly of burnt resin. Flickering synth lights cast distorted shadows along the curved walls. The silence was so complete it pressed on Orin's ears. Kale shined his lamp down a branching corridor. This shouldn't be empty. Relay stations always have workers. Orin crouched beside a shattered console. Its surface was scarred with deep claw marks, not Threxian. Their claws were fine, precise. These gouges were wild, jagged, frenzied. Stay alert, Orin said. Something hostile passed through here. They moved deeper. As they reached the central archives, the air thickened with an unsettling resonance. The hive memory cores floated in concentric rings, each orb pulsing faintly, dimmed almost to darkness. Biological wiring traced the walls, veins connecting each core to a vast neural matrix at the center of the chamber. Orin approached a cracked node. Its surface shimmered with corrupted patterns. Kale, can you interface with it? Kale knelt, connecting a portable decryptor. Strands of red and blue code rippled across the tablet's screen. It's damaged, but I can pull fragments. The first decrypted segment appeared in jagged pieces. Infection confirmed, non-hive origin, transmission vector unknown. Kale frowned. Infection? Was it a disease? Orin leaned closer. Keep going. More lines unfolded. Symptoms: neural distortion, impulse corruption, loss of collective alignment, quarantine initiated. The last piece flickered violently. Sovereign denies breach. Orders removal of evidence. Enforced silence. Kale looked up sharply. The Sovereign covered this up. Orin moved to the next core. Its surface pulsated irregularly, like an organ struggling to beat. He brushed his glove over it, and the node pulsed warmer, as if reacting to touch. "Let's decrypt this one," he said. Kale complied. The node's memories projected holographically into the air. Images emerged, first blurry, then terrifyingly clear. A Threxian worker tending to biological conduits. A shadow creeping across a corridor ceiling. Then a creature, thin, long-limbed, translucent skin stretched over a twisting exoskeleton. Its eyes were hollow pits. Its movement was jerky, unnatural, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Orin's stomach tightened. "That's not Threxian," Kale whispered. "It looks parasitic." The projection continued. The creature leapt onto the worker. Tendrils erupted from its torso, piercing the worker's carapace. The hive host convulsed violently before collapsing. The parasite's limbs twitched as it burrowed into the skull, merging with the host's neural pathways. Orin closed his eyes briefly, fighting nausea. "This is what hit them." Kale's voice trembled. "Sir, if this got into their hive network, it could spread instantly through their shared systems." Orin stepped back, absorbing the realization. A species built on collective consciousness would be incredibly vulnerable. Kale nodded. And the Sovereign, maybe he wasn't thinking clearly. Maybe he's infected. Orin turned to the final core, the largest, positioned at the heart of the chamber like a frozen sun. Its surface was covered in layered cracks, yet faint violet light pulsed beneath. He approached slowly. "Kale. Decrypt it. All of it." The screen filled with warning symbols as Kale linked the decryptor. "This one's alive. Processing it may be dangerous." "We have no choice," Orin said. The core flared, projecting an image of the hive Sovereign. His towering silhouette pulsed with authority, mandibles shifting with cold intention. But behind him, through subtle distortions, something writhed beneath his carapace, a faint shimmer, like threads of translucent tissue moving independently. A voice echoed through the chamber, the Sovereign's, but layered with a second pitch beneath. "Containment impossible. Humanity incompatible with integration. Threat to hive future models rising." The parasite inside him pulsed, distorting his form. "Eliminate them. Remove variables. Only the hive may survive." Orin clenched his fists. He wasn't calculating probabilities. He was influenced, controlled. Kale nodded grimly. "Or consumed." The projection shifted again, this time showing a Threxian scientific council. They knelt in submission as the Sovereign issued commands. "Erase all traces of the breach. Destroy infected stations. Silence all dissent." One scientist dared to speak. But the humans. A wave of psychic force slammed into her, bending her body unnaturally. She collapsed instantly. The projection cut. Kale shut off the device, face pale. "This isn't a war. It's a purge triggered by madness." The Sovereign believed humans would eventually resist the parasite, so he struck first. Orin felt the weight of that truth settle deep inside him. The Threxians feared us because the parasite couldn't infect individual minds. "We're unpredictable to it." Kale nodded. "It sees our autonomy as a threat." Orin studied the dead archives. And the Sovereign hid the infection to maintain control. He'd rather wipe out humanity than expose weakness. A sudden clatter echoed down the corridor. Orin raised his weapon. Shapes approached, Threxians, but not normal ones. Their movements were jerky, limbs twitching with unnatural rhythm. Their biolights pulsed with violet corruption, identical to the parasite's hue. Kale whispered, "Infected host drones." The drones paused at the chamber entrance, mandibles clicking erratically. Then they rushed forward with feral speed. Orin fired, each shot aimed with precision. Kale backed him, targeting their legs and joints. The drones lunged, shrieking in distorted hive tones as sparks flew across the chamber. Orin swept his blade through the first one, severing a tendril that writhed like a severed nerve. The creature collapsed, jerking violently. Another threw itself toward Kale. Orin intercepted it, driving his boot into its thorax and firing point-blank into its skull. Silence returned, broken only by the crackling of damaged wiring. Kale steadied his breathing. If they're here, the infection is still active. We need to leave. Orin nodded, retrieving the crystalline cores. These are proof of what really happened. Humanity wasn't the threat. We were the excuse. They moved quickly back through the station, avoiding clusters of twitching drones. Once aboard the freighter, Orin sealed the hatch. Kale looked at him gravely. What now? Orin stared at the cores glowing on the table. We face the Sovereign. If he's infected, we expose him. If he's lying, we confront him. Either way, this ends with truth. Kale nodded. Then we set course for Hive Prime? Orin turned toward the stars beyond the viewport. Yes. Straight to the Sovereign. For the first time, Orin understood the full scale of the war. It wasn't humanity versus the Hive, it was survival against a hidden enemy manipulating both. And the only way to stop it was to walk directly into the center of the Threxian Empire. Hive Prime filled the viewport like a colossal living monument, a sprawling world of spiraling towers, bioluminescent highways, and colossal hive structures pulsing in synchronized patterns. From orbit, the planet looked serene, almost beautiful. But beneath that elegance, Orin saw the truth buried in the relay station logs, a civilization slowly unraveling under a parasite that fed on unity. The Aelio's remnant cruised toward the restricted docking spire. Every hull plate on their patched fleet creaked with strain as they descended through shimmering layers of atmosphere. Orin stood beside Kale on the bridge, gripping the railing. This is suicidal, Kale said quietly. The Sovereign won't parley. Orin watched the hive lights flicker below. He doesn't need to parley. He only needs to listen long enough for everyone else to hear the truth. Kale exhaled with unease. And if he kills us on sight? Then we broadcast the evidence before we die. The docking bay opened like the maw of a massive creature. Dozens of Threxian guards stood waiting, their carapaces etched with the Sovereign's emblem. They moved with stiff, unnatural motions, too rigid, too synchronized. Orin recognized that twitching rhythm. Parasite influence. He stepped down the ramp ahead of his team, helmet off, hands visible. The guards raised their weapons immediately. A sharp command echoed across the platform. Hold. A tall figure approached, a Threxian of imposing stature, clad in ceremonial armor. His biolights glowed deep crimson. Hive Sovereign Xarth 9. Orin stepped forward. Sovereign Xarth. I request discourse. The Sovereign studied him with cold intensity. His movements seemed precise, yet too fluid, like something beneath his exoskeleton guided each motion. Human Commander. You enter my world unbidden. A final act of arrogance. Orin met his gaze. You exterminated entire colonies. You owe the dead an explanation. The Sovereign tilted his head, mandibles shifting. Your kind diverges. Unpredictable. Violent. You refuse unity. The Hive calculated you would become our end. Kale muttered behind Orin, we saw your calculations. They were corrupted. Orin held up a crystalline core, its violet glow pulsing softly. And we saw something else. Something you buried. A ripple of disturbance ran through the guards. Orin projected the hologram. The parasite emerged in translucent detail, its tendrils piercing a Threxian host, infecting neural pathways, twisting instinct. Then the image of the Sovereign himself, threads coiling beneath his shell, pulsing in rhythm with his commands. The Hive guards recoiled, their biolights flickering in confusion. Orin's voice carried across the chamber. Your orders, your predictions, your purge, none were yours alone. A parasite has merged with your consciousness. It's manipulating the Hive through you. The Sovereign's posture stiffened. Deceit. Fabrication. A desperate human lie. Orin shook his head. If it were a lie, your soldiers wouldn't be reacting. Several guards backed away. Others dropped into defensive stances, mandibles trembling. Their collective link was fracturing under the contradiction. A low resonance trembled through the room, almost like a distant scream buried inside the hive's consciousness. Kale whispered, "They're hearing the conflict inside their own network." Orin took another step. "The parasite couldn't infect us. It feared you'd realize humanity was immune. So it convinced you to destroy us before its existence was exposed." The Sovereign's carapace rippled unnaturally, violet threads pulsing through the cracks. His voice deepened, layered with a second tone. "Silence. The hive must obey. Divergence must be eradicated." Orin felt the temperature drop as dozens of weapons aimed at him. Kale reached for his pistol. Orin stopped him with a raised hand. He looked directly at the Sovereign. "We don't want your extinction. We want to help you. But you must let your people choose truth." The Sovereign lunged forward with impossible speed. Orin barely stepped aside before the Sovereign's claw carved a deep groove into the platform. Kale fired, but the Sovereign shielded himself with a sudden burst of psychic force that sent both humans backward. The guards split, half supporting the Sovereign, half hesitating. The infected drones surged toward Orin's team. Orin rolled to the side, firing at the nearest drone. Sparks erupted as a tendril snapped from its skull. Kale tackled another, slamming its head into the railing before shooting it through the thorax. But more kept coming, their movements fueled by parasitic frenzy. Orin shouted over the chaos, "Patch the cores into their network. Broadcast everything." Kale sprinted to a nearby terminal, jamming the crystalline nodes into the interface. The hive link shimmered violently. Waves of distorted light shot across the chamber, illuminating every Threxian with pulses of raw memory. Scenes from the relay station. The parasite. The Sovereign. The suppression of the truth. The room trembled as the hive collectively processed the flood. Several guards screamed in discordant hive tones, clutching their skulls. Others dropped their weapons. A cluster of uninfected soldiers turned their sights on their corrupted brethren. A split second later, the chamber erupted into civil war. Threxian warriors collided in a frenzy of claws and plasma bursts. Violet-lit drones fought without restraint, lashing out at anything in reach. Uninfected defenders countered with swift, coordinated strikes driven by the anger of betrayal. Orin ducked under a sweeping claw, driving his blade into a drone's neck. Kale fired in controlled bursts, covering Orin as they retreated toward the central dais. The Sovereign stood amidst the chaos, his form distorting with each pulse of violet light. "You disrupt the hive. You fracture unity. Humanity is poison." Orin steadied his breathing. "No. Humanity is the cure." He charged. The Sovereign struck first, a devastating blow that sent Orin sliding across the floor. Orin rolled, regaining his stance, and activated his plasma blade. Sparks danced as their weapons clashed. Xarth's strength was monstrous. Each strike cracked the floor. But he was predictable, his movements influenced by the parasite's rigid instinct. Orin ducked under a heavy swing and plunged the blade into a joint in the Sovereign's armor. Violet ichor sprayed, hissing as it hit the ground. The Sovereign screeched, a sound layered with multiple voices. "You cannot sever me. I am the hive." Orin stepped close, voice steady despite the tremor in his arms. "Then your hive deserves better." He drove the blade deeper. The parasite within the Sovereign writhed violently, tendrils curling through cracks in his carapace. Biolights flickered across the chamber as the hive network jolted from internal shockwaves. Xarth staggered, falling to one knee. "Human, this changes nothing. The parasite will rise again." Orin pulled the blade free. "Then we'll stand against it together." The Sovereign collapsed, the violet glow fading from his body. The parasite's threads shriveled, dissolving into dust. Across the chamber, infected drones dropped lifelessly as the control link severed. Silence followed, a silence heavy with realization. A Threxian guard stepped forward, uninfected light shimmering across her armor. "Commander Orin Hale, your truth saved our hive. We were blinded." Orin nodded, exhaustion washing over him. "We're not enemies. But this parasite nearly made us destroy each other." The guard bowed her head. "Then let us rebuild an alliance, one forged in truth rather than fear." Kale approached, breathing hard. What now, sir? Orin looked around the chamber, at Threxians aiding their wounded, at humans lowering their weapons, at a hive finally freed from manipulation. We begin again, he said quietly. Not as prey or predators. As survivors. He gazed at the dying glow of the fallen sovereign. And this time, we face the darkness together.